The Betrayers. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Yesterday, as part of my ongoing explanations of how the world of online dating is but a hunting ground for my kind, attracting both love frauds and financial frauds, often the two being combined, I explained to you about the case of an individual called David Checkley, who had caught out, by that point, some 60 individuals. But interestingly, Mr. Checkley had already been reported on nearly 10 years ago. Sam Wollaston wrote in The Guardian about a review of a television programme that was called The Betrayers, and Mr. Checkley formed part of that series. The fact is that it shows how individuals, the narcissists, betray you. Betray your love. Betray your trust. Betray the compassion that you exhibit towards us. How we betray the very existence of your world. How we tear it apart. With the betrayers, Mr. Wollaston writes, these are people such as David Checkley, who swindled 30 women. Note at this point, which was 2014, the body count, so to speak, was 30. As you know from my work of yesterday, he doubled that number. This included a lady called Susan, who was swindled out of hundreds of thousands of pounds. She thought that it was time that she welcomed someone into her life, and she considered that appropriate with regard to embarking on internet dating after being single for a while. But by welcoming Checkley, who seemed so perfect, handsome, charming, attentive, clean, all those things men so rarely are, into her life, she also invited him into her life savings. It's like the blood in your veins turns to ice. It's the most frightening thing you can think of, she says at the moment she found out, through a phone call from a woman who thought she was the one in Checkley's life. What seems so extraordinary is that Susan, as well as having the bollocks to come on the telly and talk about it, also seems incredibly switched on and intelligent. As is often the case when I explain to people, many of the clients that I help make sense of what has happened to them, enable them to navigate their way through the confusion and bewilderment to find freedom, are invariably intelligent individuals. I have advised NASA scientists, professors, CEOs, eminent authors, individuals who have set up their own companies, tech entrepreneurs, research scientists, individuals who carry a host of degrees, whose academic credentials are not in question, and who are clearly at the upper end of the academic scale. Yet their intelligence was no defence, for it is emotional thinking that is the enemy. Something, of course, which few people recognise, and that is such an important part of my work, demonstrating how the addiction creates that emotional thinking which blinds you to what is truly going on. The article asks, how the hell did he con them? It is, we learn, because the behaviour of people such as Checkley is, for anyone not in the psychiatric field, completely outside their experience. There's no reason not to believe him. He does everything as if he's in love, but in fact he's not, explains Dr. Cleo Van Velsen, a consultant forensic psychiatrist and an expert in personality disorders. It's an as-if emotion. That's an excellent summing up of the way that the narcissist behaves. He does everything as if he's in love, but in fact he's not. Driven by our narcissism, which causes the unaware narcissist to believe that he is in love, when in actual fact it's narcissistic infatuation, The individual acts as if he is in love, flatters the subject, buys them gifts, quotes poetry, monopolizes time, talks about the future, wants to have children, attempts to have children, talks about getting engaged, becomes engaged, taking you to exciting places, mirroring your behavior. All of the things that you associate with love become encapsulated in the behavior of this individual. We create the idea that we are in love with you because the narcissism causes that to happen. It has to be convincing. It has to appear genuine, although it is not. A mid-1990s emotion, perhaps that's what an as-if emotion is, like the ones experienced by Alicia Silverstone in the film Clueless. The journalist suggests that he's getting a bit suspicious of this so-called Dr. Cleo Van Velsen with her mystic gothic look and her barely disguised excitement with which she explains this stuff. Perhaps she's a betrayer too, a fake expert who cons her way onto shows just maybe because she gets a kick out of it. But the journalist admits that he's wrong. The internet confirms her credentials. The internet? Why did none of them check on Checkley? Isn't that the first rule of modern dating? Google before you canoodle. Well, it's easy to say from a metropolitan media world, but there are people who don't have much online presence. And again, there was no reason to suspect him. Also extraordinary to me is that when these women found out they'd been robbed of their money, their jewellery, their houses, and their hearts, they didn't get together and get Checkley back, give him a ballsack wedgie from a hook on the door maybe. Some of them did get together. They walked arm in arm into court to give evidence at his trial, where it took all day to read out the charges. He got 6 years, got out in less than 4, and was last heard of somewhere in North London. That's the message of this fascinating film, though fascinating in an unashamedly sensational dentist waiting room magazine kind of way, that there are betrayers under your bed, in your bed, everywhere. People such as Checkley, and Alistair, who posed as a billionaire banker and faked his own death to get his hands on poor Nina's savings, and Beth, who pretended she had cancer to rob a family she'd befriended, and Paul, who defrauded his own parents, then burned their house down for good measure. Fraudsters are often where you least expect them, and are always dangerous to know, says Rhys Shearsmith, narrating in bold uppercase. Susan, well, she does have reason to, takes up the baton of melodrama. Anyone who thinks they know their partner, she warns, look at that person sitting next to you on the sofa. So I do. Come on, I know my sofa mate. We've got kids. Oh, that doesn't count for anything. Apparently, having children can actually be a way of furthering the betrayal. It all adds to the sense of omnipotence, power, and control, says the doctor. Whilst there is a scepticism of this journalist with regard to the experiences of these behaviours, this programme, The Betrayers, which was broadcast nearly 10 years ago, documents again the behaviour of Checkley, who was not checked. Despite his prison sentence, because of his pathological personality disorder, his narcissism, he continued to do what he continued to do. And despite the fact that he was the subject of a television programme that was broadcast nationally, the fact that his imprisonment was recorded in national media, he was still able to go on and betray many more people, another 30 women, who he conned into believing that he loved, and who he conned into defrauding them of their money. This demonstrates the extent to which people still do not understand the danger that is posed by narcissism, and moreover the extent of our presence, and makes all the more important that material such as mine, which explains so much about what goes on, is utilized by you and those that you know. That this education must be extended. Naturally, I require this as part of the extension of my legacy, but it is all too apparent that there are so many that are affected by it, and even when it is covered in the way that it was described, our kind are still able to carry on doing what we do, betraying left, right, and centre.